Hey,
Hey, it works.
yes.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's going on?
How's it going?
What's good?
It's worked perfectly. I love it.
It never happens.
I was gonna say it never works this way, man.
I'm just gonna go through my shtick real quick, and then we'll start this real quick.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing today? This is Chopping It Up Hardcore with Hal Capone, discussion number 97. Today, I have the honor of speaking to these two fine gentlemen, Ryan Daniels and Tommy Davis of the legendary Hassan Sabbah band. It's been a long time since these fine gentlemen have talked about this band, and I'm honored to have you guys, and thank you so much for doing this again.
Thank you, Al. I can't believe we haven't crossed paths. Like, given the fact that I've seen probably all the clips you put up, and I've been at all those shows, I'm surprised we haven't just like stood next to each other and shook hands at some point. But yeah,
I know, like I was saying, we were probably standing shoulder to shoulder and just never introduced each other to, all of us.
Yeah.
Just so weird.
It is. It's amazing. Thank you for having us. This is great. Yeah, like to break the silence after 20 years. Like that's how Tommy and I were kind of phrasing it. It's pretty amazing. It was such an important time in our lives. It's been such an amazing just initiative overall that can't believe everybody is still loving it 20 plus years later.
Can't believe anybody gives a shit, to be honest. I mean, we were calculating it out yesterday, and we figured that Hassan was probably around from the moment that Ryan and I started writing riffs together until we broke up, about 8 months, which is not like, hardcore bands don't really last that long, 90% of the time, but 8 months is still pretty fucking short,
Yeah. In 8 months, how many shows did y'all play in that short time?
I don't even, 40, 50?
You think we
I don't know.
I mean, we probably canceled half of those or didn't show up, but there are probably flyers for about 40 or 50. We played, I was thinking about this last night, and I started going through some stuff online trying to find lineups of some of these shows we played. So we played like the Wilkes-Barre Fest, right? And that was with we have a story about this, but Airborne Radar, Rainer Maria played that. God, who else was? I mean, it was just we played with tons of really incredible bands. Some of them we knew about at the time, like we played shows with Drop Dead, and I always felt like a total fraud being on the stage with them because they're fucking awesome, and who am I but just some jackass with a guitar. And then we played with some other bands that maybe they were just another band on the bill to us, but you discover 10, 15, 20 years later that people totally love and idolize them. So I think, being together for such a short period of time, we somehow managed to stumble into this scene that was, in one way, was kind of on the wane. Like part of the world that I came out of, I think, was on the wane, but then this other thing was starting to explode with all the bands like Orchid and all the bands that were on Witching Hour and Electric Human Project. And that's just sort of, we kind of stumbled into that, and recorded our handful of things and then split up. And it seems like people still seem to care about what happened at that moment in time. So it was just kind of dumb luck,
Yeah. There's a lot of legend around it too, though. I think that there's stories because we were a bunch of fucking idiots at the time. So we would roll into parties and just basically bust everything up, and we kind of became a little notorious in Boston for a lot of different things, good and bad. But I think a lot of that kind of traveled with us, and it kind of traveled with us to, the people that we're meeting and a lot of the stuff that kind of was connecting. Another thing that really kind of helped with this was the internet. I mean, it's weird to say this, but our first release was an MP3 onto a message board, right?
Yeah.
That was basically that was our viral moment before viral was viral. This was like 99 maybe.
Yeah.
And that took off, and everyone loved it. They're like, who the fuck is this? Why is this so amazing? Why is it so hectic and blah, 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 blah. And it just sort of became this story that kind of followed us wherever we went. So even though it was very potent, very short, it was something that I think hit people a lot of different ways. And especially now, like listening to some of the stories that people are telling us through this account and through everything else, it's really come, full circle. A lot of people have really kind of, in a lot of ways, resonated with the words, resonated with the angst that kind of came through, and resonated just with the general, the general idea of that time. And it's amazing, even how short it was, it's still that impactful.
Yeah. The band really is almost like a myth of that era. Not a lot of information is out there, you know what I mean? So it's great to hear stories about people witnessing stuff like that. And, it's almost like you guys didn't put out a lot of music, but it's almost people are chomping at the bit for more and more. And maybe that was like the surge of loving the band so much, is like, because what you put out was so amazing. Like every time I heard it, I was like, oh, I can't wait till something else comes out. And then you guys broke up, and I was like, oh, like super bummed out. But I mean, it's almost like a myth of a band around here in New England, you know?
That's a big thing. I think Tommy can probably explain this better, but like we broke up before we became what we were supposed to become, you know? So like in a lot of ways, like it was fleeting and it was quick and it was beautiful. But like, I think if we had gotten a chance to do an LP or something else, we'd be like thrusted into the Screamo namesake a bit harder. You know, I think like when you go to like
good thing we didn't record that fucking thing.
It's true.
Now you can listen to those. I mean, this may not be apparent to anybody else, but whatever, like some sort of music backstory. If you listen to the, I don't know, like the comp tracks and the splits and the demos, we were learning how to play with each other. So we had all played in bands before, but I'd played in a hardcore band for a couple of years called Prevail. And
so
the song, what?
So good.
You know that, man.
So good. So good.
So that band, right? Like we had a pretty set songwriting pattern from the moment we started. And it was, I would come up with almost all the guitar parts and write all the songs, do almost all the arrangements or whatever. And that was kind of how that band worked. You know, we kind of knew that from the moment we started playing. When Hassan started, I wanted to write stuff that either, you know, wouldn't have fit Prevail or were just other things that I was interested in. And so I was playing around with riffs that I just I wasn't as comfortable playing that kind of thing. Yeah. Ryan knew how to arrange songs and do stuff with timing that I had never encountered that kind of thing before. And then we went and played with Mike, who's like this fucking demon. Yeah. And I had no idea what the fuck was happening, you know? So like my whole sense of how you write music it was just starting over, right? So those early tracks, I think it's us learning how to play with each other. And when you hear the 7-inch, I think the 3 Untitled 1 and 2 and what's the fucking other one? The Lips Open Up, Palms Explode. What's that song called? Watching the Eyes of Someone Lying. Like those are the 3 songs on that 7-inch that we wrote. I feel like we wrote once we learned how to play with each other. Yeah. I think the arrangements are better. Our sense of like chaotic parts mixing with quieter, more melodic and moody parts. All of that is starting to work in a way where before I felt like we were kind of doing the thing that I hated in other bands that I won't mention, like Usurp Synapse, where it sounded just like, sorry, whatever, throwing shade. Like bands that just strung together a bunch of fucking parts and it was over in 70 seconds. Like that's cool. I still listen to stuff like that, but that wasn't like the kind of music that I think wanted to write. And some of the really early stuff has that feel a little bit. Yeah. But those 3 songs on the 7-inch that I feel like that was what we were going towards. Yeah. And we had a song or two that we never recorded that were sort of later songs that were kind of doing that a little bit too. Yeah. So we had kind of figured out what band we were and what we were going to be at the moment the 7-inch was recorded and when it came out. But of course, that's like right when we broke up. So I think Zach and Chad played a lot of that too as well. So like Zach had joined us after we had already kind of done a lot of songwriting. Like at the beginning, it was kind of like Tommy and I 50-50 sort of splitting parts, and I was arranging with my metronome Mike, fucking amazing guy. But like by the time Zach came in, he was bringing like a Black Flag type feel. He was bringing in like a Cro-Mag type feel, which wasn't what we were going for, but like the element of his songwriting and riffs were kind of coming through a little bit to that extent. Yeah. So even like, you know, some of like the harder, chunkier stuff kind of came from him writing too. And Chad's lyrical abilities, he's a poet, you know, and so I think that it kind of elevated us even more to a real band. You know, beforehand we were just kind of screaming over stuff and just trying to make it work. But by the time Chad came in and made sense of everything, and you know, if you read the words of Chad's lyrics outside of the music, they still are awesome. Like they can be kind of completely part and parcel and not sort of attached to anything, and it's still art. So I think it's a lot of that kind of came in there as well. Yeah. Now
were you guys fans of Puritan before Chad came in?
Yeah, I mean Tommy and
friends, man. Yeah, I mean, Chad and I met way back in the like super fucking early days of the internet, like 94, 95 on the straight edge list. It was a listserv, right? I don't know if you were ever on this thing, Hal, but SXE-L at cornell.edu and at american.edu. And, you know, those were the days of like the first couple Michigan Fest in 95, 96, the early More Than Music Fest, like 94 to 97. And Chad and I had somehow hooked up on that listserv. And I was really into Puritan before Chad sang. He played guitar, and this guy Doug sang on their first split 7-inch with December and some of their early releases.
Yeah.
And then Prevail and Puritan were going to play the Michigan Fest, the Mind Over Matter Fest in Michigan.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, what, I can't remember the backstory, but Chad and I kind of come up with this whole, like, it's us against the fucking world at that thing, like, fuck all those people. Like, I don't know why we felt that way. You know, I don't think anybody hated us or whatever,
yeah.
but we had this sort of mindset. And if you see, there are videos of that fest. And if you see the Prevail set and then the Puritan set, Chad is on his knees on the stage during the Prevail, and he's grabbing the mic and singing. I was doing that during Puritan, you know.
Yeah.
So Chad and I were really tight, you know, before like mid-90s. And I reached out to him when Hassan was trying to figure out what we were going to do for our second vocalist after it did not work out with the first guy.
Yeah.
And he was in New Mexico planning to come back to Pennsylvania. And we were like, well, you know, here's the demo tapes and stuff. Like, we think we're like trying to do something like Mohinder or Shotmaker or something.
Yeah.
And I remember he wrote back and he was like, I don't know about Mohinder or Shotmaker. Some of this shit sounds like Napalm fucking Death. Like, yeah, dude, let's do it. So, I mean, that's how it was just so improbable, you know, like just shot him emails like, hey, we're doing this thing. These guys are really cool. This drummer is fucking crazy. See what you think.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I'm moving back east. Let's do it.
He also wrote a lot of the lyrics on the train back. So if you listen to, like, you know, Fuck the Thinking That They're Living Some, you know, the line about snakes in Kentucky was actually because he was in Kentucky on a mountain looking down and like wondering where are all the snakes, you know? So he was writing it in his little, like, you know, diary notebook kind of on the way to Pennsylvania. And then I think it was right before Wilkes-Barre, or it was another fest, but it might have been Easton Fest. I'm not sure. I can't quite remember. But we basically brought all of Mike's recording gear. Yeah, an 8-jack tape player. You had like all these microphones and all this other stuff. We brought it down to Chad's house in Pennsylvania to record the vocals right before we went and played another show live, and that became the split 7-inch with Usurp and other things.
This thing.
Yeah.
Check this out. I went digging through some boxes, man. I got multiple copies of this motherfucker.
Oh, you selling stuff now, Tommy? What are you selling?
No, I trade. I got like Hassan #1. What? I got 76. I got test presses.
Yo, let's get a store going. Let's put it up online.
I got some Orchid Drums Dream unplayed splits on red.
What are you doing?
Distro right when we broke up, right? So I got all this stock before we were going to go on tour, and then we broke up like hours. But we can talk about that story. Hours before tour, and I was like, well, I got all these fucking records. Like, what am I going to do with this? And yeah, I mean, this is part of that story. I was just like, you know what? I'm done with all this shit. And I went back to my home in South Carolina after it turned out we weren't going to go on tour. And I left all those records. I mean, I dug up all kind of stuff, man. Neil Perry 7-inch. Where's that other thing? Somebody should trade me something for this if you want. Orchid Encyclopedia of American Traders, unplayed. Yeah, dude. I got I don't know, man. I got some, nobody's getting this, but, the current Indian Summer split.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's badass OG shit.
You see in the comments, people want to trade right now.
Yeah,
y'all gotta have some heat that I want, though. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm gonna put your phone number in there, Tommy, real quick. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead, do that. 1-800. Hit me. I mean, yeah, I had a bunch of these. I had a lot more actually, and I've given them to people, like over the years that were friends. I was never gonna throw them on Discog. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Unless I don't know, my house burns down. Well, Ryan, unless my house burns down or something, like I don't need the money to like milk some. That's just not my vibe.
Yeah.
But I gave some to Mike Seatown because he's an old friend, I think, and then I just always thought like at some point I'll trade him if somebody has like the first press of a Gray Matter record or something I want, or like some fingernails from Gee during Rites of Spring, like then we can trade,
Yeah.
You thought about this, Tommy, haven't you? You planned this out.
No, I was digging. I was trying to find a copy of the Usurp record with the Band-Aid and the Razor Blade.
Oh.
And I found a box of shit. It was back there, and I've got one with the Band-Aid on it, but none with the Razor Blade. We probably dumped them out.
Yeah, no. There's also a sorry leaflet that Mike Haley put in after the fact too. I never saw that either, but he ended up apologizing to Zach. We ran into him one time, and then with all the other records that went out, I can't remember how many it was, but it was probably at least 100. Like a sorry for doing this kind of thing.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't fly nowadays, but like, I mean.
Oh man. So when we saw it, we were like, should we say something? And we're kind of debating back and forth, and that's part of what was on our side of the cover, but we didn't want to obviously hinder somebody's creativity, and we don't want to be that kind of band that's just like doesn't want to do it because of a certain thing. But like all throughout the process, like we weren't involved. Like we're telling Mike Haley, we're like, dude, this is fucking lame. We can't be. And then he just ended up putting it out by himself. Like we had these internal conversations, and we finally brought it to Mike, and we were like, we're not okay with this. And he didn't listen, just kind of kept on going. But yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's legendary, and people are talking about SKRAMZ stuff like that. That's one of those like benchmark records that everybody kind of goes back to. So from that perspective, it's nice. I just wish that it didn't have such a tone to it that kind of created a lot of different negative things. Because for me personally, probably about a year before that record came out, I lost somebody to suicide that was really close to me, and they were part of like the scene that I grew up in Merrimack Valley outside Boston, which was like Piebald and Cave In and Converge and all those guys. And like this guy was a close friend. Like he would come over and talk to my mom. We'd have shows and stuff like that. And like losing him in my life was really, really big. And I think that scar wasn't fully healed yet by the time a lot of the stuff came out. So for me personally, and I know Chad had some other moments like that too, it was just inappropriate. It was bad. Yeah. So.
Now, Tommy, you had mentioned Usurp and kind of the song structure of them. You guys did a split together. Were you kind of not feeling the vibe between both bands on that split because you said that, or?
So, all right, let me. I'm not. So when Hassan was around. No, I mean, I'm not going to say anything super inappropriate. I'm just going to be honest, So when Hassan was around, like, just to sort of set the table, like, we were all emotionally unstable. And I'm being serious. I'm not, like, trying to romanticize. Like, I think back on that time in my life, and I met a lot of people that obviously I'm still friends with and really close with. It was very important, but I was totally emotionally unstable. I was probably suffering from anxiety disorder and didn't know what that was at the time, didn't have the language. We were fucking drunk all the time. And I don't mean like just getting drunk and playing video games. Like we were wrecking shit.
Yeah.
We were a fucking menace, So that was not like a great place to be in to like do the things that we were doing. So we did in that context talk a lot of shit about a lot of people. Some of it merited, some of it just like somebody probably needed to sit us down and just be like, yo man, write some songs and shut the fuck up. But in that context, right, like we got asked to do that split, and from my perspective, having been in the hardcore scene in the South, like we were all super tight because our scene was small, right? Like, so the scene in South Carolina was really attached to the scene in Wilmington and Raleigh and Atlanta, Georgia, and in Florida. There just weren't a whole lot of people, right? So we were all really close. And if you did a split record with somebody, it was like an offering of friendship, right? Like I would never do a split with somebody that I didn't know. We had to be, even if I didn't like their band, if we were cool, then yeah, let's do it,
Yeah.
So it seemed weird to do that, to do it. But it was also just like, if this other person wants to put something out with this other band that seems to be playing the same shows or whatever, then, I don't care. It's weird, but let's do it. And yeah, I mean, I think we saw that, and Hassan in the early days, we had this stuff with like Hassani Sabbah and the Holy Hand Grenades and all this kind of shit, and we were being kind of stupid and ironic or whatever. And then when Chad got into the band and Zach was part of the band too, we kind of had conversations, like, do we really, like, that's not who we are?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a fucking bomb throwing terrorist, like, I don't want to fetishize violence for the sake of it, you know, to like make the band look a certain way. And then when that thing dropped, it was like, man, this is really fucking stupid. You know, like Ryan said, people that we know, and some of us had people close to us die of suicide, and it's not a joke. It's not something to like make your band look cooler, and it's not edgy or what the fuck ever. So I don't know, man. I was a little bit older than some other people involved in that thing, and I was just, I don't know. It did not seem like my aesthetic. The whole like pseudo ironic corporate riff on Nike just struck me as fucking dumb, you know? So I didn't know who those people were. I didn't really care that much about the music. Like, other people love it, and that's great. It just wasn't my thing. The like whole aesthetic, I thought, just wasn't, I don't know, man. It just seemed like a weird thing to pose over. I mean, you know, like.
Were we excited about being on a split record with a band that had 1,000 split records and was part of the scene? Yes. Were we as proud of the output and what it's affected? I don't know.
No, I mean, that cover is a direct response. Like, our cover with the handwriting is a direct response to the Usurp side, because we were like, if they're going to do this stupid, what we thought of as kind of stupid corporate whatever, suicide, ironic, blah blah blah, it's like, well, let's just fucking handwrite this thing, you know? Like, we were all coming out of that early mid-90s gravity, repercussion, abolition stuff anyway. Like, that's where our head and where our hearts were. Yeah. And that was the aesthetic for that stuff, right? I mean, you glue together paper bags, you handwrite shit, and that's kind of how it is. So we were like, we're gonna do this, throw this thing out there and just see what they think, you know? And I don't know, man, I feel like we kind of learned a little bit of a lesson about that. You know, I think all of us had been in bands before where everything was DIY. We either had full control over what we were putting out, or we knew the people we were working with really well. So it was like, you know, you're working with your brothers and sisters putting stuff out, essentially, you know, people from your DIY world. And that was not the case for that. I mean, Mike Haley was a great dude. We didn't know him that well, but he was really cool, and I never had any problem with him at all. But, you know, it's a different game when you're working with somebody you know in and out to put out a record, and you have some control over how everything goes. And I think we learned our lesson a little bit with that one.
Yeah. I think that's why when we started talking to Andy Lowe about the 7-inch, who, by the way, started working with us even before we had like a full band. It was just me, Tommy, and Mike. But we sort of really kind of nurtured a relationship with him, and we invited him up to Boston and wanted to get to know him as much as he wanted to get to know us for that very reason. Like, the creative control really sort of like was just a bad taste in our mouth from all that experience with Usurp. So we wanted to make sure that it was much more like within our control and within our sort of mindset of where we wanted to be. So I think it changed pretty much overnight. And even like thinking about some of the other labels that we were talking to just for like the compilations we're on, like Happy Couples Never Last, or Iodine Recordings, or things like that. Like, those are band labels that are just like there for the bands. They're 100% for the bands, you know, versus just trying to get something out there that's like shock value and material that's going to sell just based off the cover, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to say to you guys, salute on your old bands too, because Prevail and Rinse, and also Fall of Leningrad, that split with Force Fed Glass. Like, I love that music as well. So
that's so
like,
cool, man.
Yeah, it's great.
Prevail is so good. People should go back and listen. The same as Fall of Leningrad. Like, the multiple vocals in that split is just like I don't know, man. It's mind-boggling, and I love Force Fed Glass too, so it's like, it's just a great split. If anybody hasn't heard it, you should go back and listen to it. Same thing with Prevail and the Rinse 7-inch, like, awesome stuff.
All that
stuff
that's mentioned in one way or another is all Hassan, because it's like me and Mike were in Fall of Leningrad, Zach was in Force Fed Glass, Chad and Tommy were in Rinse, and it all kind of came together. But yeah, thank you for that. Honestly, I haven't heard that for Fall of Leningrad, and it's nice to hear. I think that's where me and Mike really kind of learned how to do songwriting together, because I was coming from bands. Like, I played with a lot of the folks from Sinaloa in high school. They were in bands together, and when I started joining with Mike, he was coming from like a Biohazard, Madball kind of era type thing. Like, he was much more hardcore, and I was kind of introducing him to all this other random stuff, and his eyes were just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And like, as we were kind of playing together, I was like, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then I think, you know, Fall of Leningrad was kind of like a test bed to some degree for what became Hassan's song structures later. So yeah. Thank you for that.
That's awesome. I always ask, what were you guys listening to before you found punk and hardcore? and what kind of grabbed you to start getting into punk and hardcore as kids?
As kids?
You know, I have this photo that my mom sent me not that long ago, and I'm like maybe 4, and I'm kind of like passed out asleep in front of a record player. And it's like, my sister's 6 years older than I am, right? So she was, this is in the 80s, she was listening to Duran Duran and all that kind of stuff, you know? So I somehow got into Kiss when I was super, like 4 and 5. Yeah. And I had this Kiss poster, and it's just all 4 of their faces, you know?
Yep.
And at night, I would make my mom take it off the wall when I went to sleep because it was like creepy. But I would make her put it back up before I would like get out of bed, you know? So somehow, man, for me, like I was watching MTV all the time, you know, which meant 120 Minutes and Headbangers Ball. Yeah. So I was always into metal, like when I was super young. And at some point, you know, in Headbangers Ball, I think when I was like maybe 13, you start seeing like Agnostic Front on Headbangers Ball, right? Yeah. And like I was into Danzig, so I went back and got into Misfits and Samhain. All those dudes are wearing like Septic Death shirts or Dead Kennedy. So I started listening to that. And I didn't have an understanding really of like that Dead Kennedys was punk and that Napalm Death was grindcore, or that Morbid Angel was death metal and this other thing, Exodus, was thrash. It was just like, I'm a kid in sweet fuck all South Carolina surrounded by a bunch of Baptists. Like, I kind of like this because I think it's cool, and they fucking are scared of me, which is helpful for my self-preservation, you know? So I was into all of that stuff. And I think when I was like, and I somehow got into like The Cure and Depeche Mode and all that kind of stuff, you know? And then there were these kids at high school that had fucking mohawks and crazy leather jackets and spikes and all that kind of stuff, you know? And I was like, whoa, who are those people? And somehow I was trying to think about this the other day, man. I don't know how this happened, but I went from like doing my own thing to being friends with this kid, Robert Bird, who had a huge mohawk, and he drove a red hearse, you know, just total like terrifying motherfucker, but super smart. He invited me to a show, like a local show at a American Legion Hall. And it was the first show I went to, you know, and I remember walking in there, and I think I was wearing like a Mud Honey shirt or something, you know, like, which is cool. Yeah. And Mud Honey's fucking awesome. Yeah. But like, damn, dude, we didn't plan that.
I didn't plan that.
Yeah. So I'm wearing Ryan's shirt. But I went in there, and it was like, oh, this is not the thing. Like, everybody else is wearing like Jawbox shirts or whatever, and I think that's when I kind of figured out like the punk world is different than all this other stuff that I was into. And, you know, I think that experience was similar to a lot of people's, where I was sitting and looking up on the stage. It wasn't a stage, but there were kids that were my age or a little bit older playing in bands and just ripping shit, you know, and people were going insane. And it was still one of the most violent shows I've ever seen, you know, but everybody was helping each other up, you know, people were getting the hell beat out of them, but it was great. And I think at that sort of moment, I figured out like what punk was and what hardcore was. And it seems like within weeks I was finding out about bands like Minor Threat and Bad Brains. And we would go, I don't know how, but there was a pawn shop in our town, and every week they would get punk tapes, you know, used. So I could go there, and for $3, I remember I got a stack of tapes. I get Circle Jerks Group Sex, and it's the old one, right, where it plays twice on one side, on the other side it's like, fuck the record industry, record over this. Black Flag, My War on cassette, and Dead Kennedys and God We Trust Incorporated, right? And we would just keep going, man. I'd find all this stuff, and I kind of like learned through those friends. I started learning about stuff like Christian Death and the Swans and Bauhaus and a bunch of Throbbing Gristle, all this other weird shit. So yeah, I mean, I think like, you know, it's a weird thing where you start at that point in the 80s, you know, where a lot of stuff is coming through zines or MTV to a certain degree. You're getting wind of all this weird music, but until you're part of a scene, you don't really know how it all separates out, for good or bad, right? Yeah. But it's also like the place where you learn punk has its own kind of ethics, right? And what the DIY thing was all about. And yeah, that's sort of how I fell into all of that. You know, I learned like years later, like I liked Agnostic Front from Headbangers Ball, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like years later, I learned like they were cool, you know, in hardcore. I just thought they were like this metal band, you know, like with this singer that was scary as shit. Like that dude was scary in a way that like the people from Death weren't, you know? Like I still love Death.
Yeah, yeah.
This like, Death is cool.
Yeah.
But fucking Roger Murray is scary as shit, you know? Like I don't fuck with that dude. Yeah, so that was sort of my like weirdo music journey into punk.
I guess I had a similar journey. It probably didn't start out the same way though. I think you asked when we were kids what we got into.
Yeah.
So I think my first love rather, when I started playing guitar around like 9 or 10 was surf music. So like I would idolize the Ventures and idolize like Bob Bogle and how fast he was picking and just how crazy it was, and then try to play it. But then, you know, as I kind of got more into music, and I guess especially being in Boston, proximity wise to being a lot of, you know, amazing Boston bands like this is probably through the back door to punk, but college rock, like the Pixies, O Positive, Buffalo Tom, like all this stuff. My cousin was huge into all this stuff, so that kind of formulated there. But he also turned me on to the Ramones, and I kind of played the Ramones in my head back to something like the Ventures, and how it was really just fast, fucking straightforward, like no frills type chords. And that was like, wow, amazing. Like I need this, I need to go there. And you know, through that, it became more things like, you know, just keep digging to the CBGB scene, finding out, you know, hardcore, like Tom was talking about before. And then also like back to the proximity thing, being around bands like, you know, In My Eyes, Bane, 10 Yard Fight, you know, all these amazing, like, you know, old school hardcore bands were just playing like in the town next door to me. And so I would go out to shows, and even though I wasn't fully into, you know, that type of thing, it was always amazing to see that, and always just like a beautiful community, and like people were helping each other out. Like this is all the straight edge community folks, and so we're, you know, doing like Food Not Bombs, and we're doing like other things on the weekends, and just being great people and being a community. So the more I got into that, the more I got into like, you know, bands like Piebald or bands like Converge, which opened me up to Screamo, and really thinking about like, you know, I don't know, the idea that you could still have elements of hardcore and have that angst come through with a beautiful melody. That was like my Cambrian explosion. That was like, oh my God, you can do this and get away with it. Like this is so awesome. And so it was like, you know, Ordination of Aaron, Julia, Native Nod, Indian Summer, like the list goes on. Portraits to Past came in around that time for me too. And that was really when I started, you know, solidifying a lot of my style and what I really loved. And then by the time Tommy and I met, like I was probably a wave past like a lot of the early, you know, Gravity Records and the San Diego scene stuff, but it was all about Honeywell. It was all about like Mohinder. It was all about like Portraits to Past again. I'm going to just name him twice because they're that good. Heroin, you know, everything. It's just like, that was for me. That's where I finally found like the place that I wanted to kind of be in, and that was my punk rock history for sure. But started off in different directions. I think it was probably just through music in general. Like I just have a love for music. Like I listen to everything. I love really abrasive hard music, but I also listen to like, you know, really amazing ambient quiet stuff, and, you know, Stockhausen, and just the idea of sound and noise just is what I love. So all across the board, spectrum.
Nice. I just want to talk about the elephant in the room, since it's been talked about on this comment section for the whole time we've been talking. I'm just going to say my viewpoint on this. I hate the word scram. I hate it. I don't understand it. I'm in my 50s, so I'm allowed not to like it. I don't like it. And I barely like Screamo. I think it's hardcore, and if you want to say screamy hardcore or emotional hardcore, whatever it is that you're trying to pin the genre down to. But SKRAMZ, I just don't like. I don't like saying it. I just don't understand it. I've been going to shows since the like early 80s, and I've still been going to shows in my 50s, and it's just hardcore to me. I love all the different sounds of the hardcore. What do you guys feel on SKRAMZ? Because I know it's not a great word for us older gentlemen. So what do you think of that? And even Screamo, because it wasn't Screamo until all these bands broke up anyways. So what do you think on that?
How much time do you have?
Yeah. You know, the first time I saw SKRAMZ was on the fucking internet somewhere, and someone had attached it to Hassan. It's the first time I'd ever seen it, right? And my first fucking thought was like, is that some new metal shit? And are they trying to say we're new metal? Because that's fucking offensive. Like, I don't want to even be in the orbit of that bullshit. And then I found out what it was, and I was like, man, I don't know. Like, the kids can do whatever they want. That's not my vibe. Like, I think when we were around, like, screamo was a thing. It was a term that everybody kind of used jokingly or ironically or whatever. But I think we just thought of ourselves as a punk band, you know, like we were a punk or a hardcore band.
Yeah.
And all that stuff that we listened to, like Indian Summer, Mohinder, Heroin, Shotmaker, like that was just all punk and hardcore. And I mean, Hal, you probably remember this because you're fucking gray beard like I am, you know, like there was that time in the 90s where, you know, there was hardcore, like Outspoken, Earth Crisis, Chokehold. And then there was hardcore like Current and Iconoclast and Struggle and Downcast and all that stuff, right? And there was like a moment, I remember going to More Than Music, I think in 94 when it was in Dayton. And that show was like, it was the perfect crystallization of that. It was Split Lip, Ashes, Outspoken, Current, Iconoclast played that. I think Ottawa played a surprise set in that.
So good.
Yeah, they were fucking insane. A whole bunch of other bands like that. But then it was like, I remember this distinctly when Chokehold went from being like full on chugga kind of tough guy stuff to being political and putting stuff out on Bloodlink and sounding a little bit gnarlier and like learning to play it a little bit faster, you know, like they were hardcore, but they weren't like victory hardcore. You know what I mean? Like there was that kind of distinction. So there was a lot of debate around what was hardcore and what was punk in that vein. And I think we and a lot of all those bands that we were playing with, I think we just kind of all understood ourselves to be a certain kind of hardcore that was maybe more legible because we were attached to DIY ethics and we didn't want to have like fucking college block lettering for our name or like glossy covers or whatever, you know, like we were hardcore, like Kent McClard Abolition were hardcore, or Gravity was hardcore or punk. And that, I mean, that was how I always understood all of that stuff. And the screamo thing, I think we just always understood it to be kind of a joke, you know? And I remember like when emo violence got coined, like I could be wrong, but my memory of that is Chris Bickle from Inhumanity made that up. And he made it up like kind of as a joke. And is it on like maybe a Guyana Punchline record or maybe an Inhumanity record, right? About emo violence and shit like that. And all that stuff was circulating is kind of a joke, you know? So then to think like screamo became an actual real fucking genre that then morphed into this horrific MTV shit that then needed SKRAMZ to describe the real thing, the real thing. It's like, I don't know, man. I mean, if that helps people sort things out, I guess that's cool. Like, you will never hear me refer to anything I ever played in as screamo or SKRAMZ, you know? It's just, I'm old, dude. It's fucking punk and hardcore with blast beats.
The classifications, right? I think actually somebody explained to me last night after we made that little post on Instagram was SKRAMZ is essentially what, you know, fast hardcore was mixed with like emotional hardcore. So like the idea of the classification and the true essence makes sense. The word is fucking dumb. So whatever else we want to call it, let's go for that. Like anything else, guys, anything else. There's ideas, throw them out there. Let's go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know what it was. Like you guys, I heard it and I was like, what the fuck is that? I was like, I don't even know what that, like, they're talking about the stuff I was listening to in the late 90s and early 2000s. I'm like, I just didn't get it. I was like, and like you said, I get that people have to kind of, you know, classify things to get that, you know, niche of like what you're listening to, I guess, to explain it to somebody. But I mean, for somebody that doesn't listen to hardcore, it's hard to explain hardcore to somebody that doesn't listen to it anyway. So if you're saying, oh, this is emotional hardcore, I mean, to somebody that just likes, you know, Five Finger Death Punch, it's almost impossible to explain explain screamo or SKRAMZ or whatever you want, or power violence or whatever you want to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, imagine how weird it is to find out a band you played in is like part of a genre you never fucking heard of. It's like, well, all right, I guess that's cool. I mean, you guys do what you're gonna do, you know. I'm just here for the riffs, bruh.
It's still, like, from what I'm gathering though, it still means a lot to a lot of people that were maybe a generation past us. So you know, if you love it, you love it. And there's that. But I think, you know, just us old men here hearing this it's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree. For the younger people that love SKRAMZ, I mean, I'm not knocking them for saying it, but for me personally, I'm an old guy, and you know, a lot of people are like, oh, those old heads, they, you know, blah blah blah. It's just, it is what it is. But I love that this scene is still going on nowadays with these young kids making amazing bands too.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm still going to shows. I went to a show in Alston a couple months ago that was just like amazing. It's just really fun being my age, still going to see younger people making awesome music. So I'm glad that it just keeps going and keeps going. It hasn't died at all.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of, you know, sort of fell out of that after Hassan broke up. I kind of drifted away from the scene for a little bit, you know. I mean, when you been playing at that point, I've been playing in bands for like 5 or 6 years, which meant like every Sunday was eaten up with band practice, and then every break you have from school is like, where are you going to go play shows? When are you going to go record? And so after Hassan broke up, I was like, I think I'm out for a little bit, you know, like I need a breather. I need to step away a little bit. And, you know, I go to tons of shows and stuff now too, you know, when I can or whatever. But I went back a couple years ago and I was like, well, who, you know, what are like the bands that are doing that kind of thing, if anybody, you know? And I went back and listened to some stuff and I was like, oh, okay, like these bands are there, it's fine, you know, whatever, maybe like, but if I want to listen to this, I'm whipping out the Heroin record or whatever. But then I heard that band Hawk and I listened to that LP and that thing blew me away, man. I bought that record and I sat down with the lyrics, and I have not done that with the record in this genre in a long time. I listened to that thing over and over, read the lyrics, and I thought about that band and I was like, well, what is it? Why do I like that band so much? And the other ones I hear, I'm like, man, they're good, but if I never hear it again, it's fine, you know? And that band to me sounds exactly like if they had been on a split 7-inch with Embassy or Current in '96, it would have sounded like it belonged in that era. Yeah. But they're also doing their own thing where they're not a rehash, right? Like those guys are such incredible songwriters. Yeah. There's something about that band, man. And I'm a professor at Ohio State and I teach this class on punk and black metal. And I reached out to those dudes over Instagram and asked them to come talk to my class. And they did. We did a Zoom session. And I had my class like listen to that record and study the lyrics, you know? So I got to talk with them a little bit. And they kind of gave us a window onto the scene from their perspective, you know, out in the Bay Area. And they're like, you know, they're kind of old, you know, they're not old, but they're like, they've been around for a while doing that thing. So they're kind of like, I don't know if they're like the senior folks in that scene, but they're not like, you know, they're not like the young guns anymore, you know? But they gave us a really cool window on how the scene had kind of developed and what it looked like. And, you know, it's very cool and very heartening to see those kind of people with like that talent and those kind of ethics still creating that autonomous anti-capitalist underground world, you know? And I love that that's there. I knew it was still there, you know? But it's such like a necessity to have that kind of cultural world, I think, you know, especially now where like all music is endlessly available to everybody and can be made and consumed without any community or maybe any politics or ethics. I like that stuff is still happening and is generating bands like that, you know, like if those are the bands that are popping out in 2023, man, like this place is in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, Ben, because that's the band that I saw during the summer. And I also took video of it. So it is like up on my page too. And I talked to Tommy from that band a little while ago too, so that's like great, I love people. That band.
Great people. Yeah,
such such a awesome band. I wanted to ask too about the incident with the hi-hat cutting. and was it true that you got fixed up and then went back and finished the set, and Caven stopped playing so that y'all could finish what you were doing? Is that the story?
I got the fucking scars. Here's what I remember. We were, I was singing at the time, and yeah, the hi-hat went flying. My finger just felt weird, and I looked down and I could see like muscle and bone, and it was kind of, the tip of my pinky was kind of loose, and there was blood all over the floor, and I was like, oh shit. And so I was holding it so it wouldn't fall off, you know? And I went to our friend Pat Flynn, who was like our roadie and just like, I don't know, probably had more brain cells than we did at the time. And I was like, Pat, I need to go to the hospital. I got to go somewhere, you know? And we were at Waltham. Is that where we were, Ryan, that show?
Yeah, I think it was Brandeis University.
Yeah, I think I went to like the Brandeis University Hospital or something. And yeah, they fucking sewed me up. But as I was going out, I heard Ryan grab the mic and he was like, if anybody finds a pinky on the ground. And I was like, I mean, I wasn't going to say anything because I was worried my finger was falling off. You know, I was like, oh, I got the pinky, you know.
Yeah.
And then did we play when I came back, or did we play another show like right after
That's
that?
where it got hazy for me, because I saw that story too. And I honestly can't remember. I do remember obviously the blood everywhere, and I remember grabbing the microphone, but I think I want to say, I don't know if this is against legend, but I think that you left and you were in the hospital for the night. But yeah, I don't know.
No,
I can't remember.
Not for the night. They sewed me up and wrapped the thing up. And somewhere in that short window of time when I was singing, there was one day where we played 2 shows back to back. Like we played and then went and played somewhere else. And I don't know if it was that one. Like I didn't come back and keep playing the show. I came back and Orchid was playing. And they covered Project X at that show. I remember that because I was sewn up. I was like, I'm going to go stomp some motherfuckers for Project X. But so we didn't keep playing that show, but it's possible that we went and played another show somewhere else, like Haverhill or something right after that. I can't remember.
Like, yeah, back in the day, we used to just, like, I didn't say no to any shows when we were kind of, getting offers. So I was like, yeah, we can do it. What time is it? 7 o'clock? We're playing a show at 6. We'll be there. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. There's a lot of that happening. Yeah, I know that in Lawrence you were singing and Zach was just playing guitar. So by that point, I think you probably needed like a month or so to get fixed up. But you're definitely only singing then. Maybe it was that show. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember, man.
That's why we're trying to get a lot of stuff out there. And I've been trying to crowdsource a lot of information from people that we knew then, because it just seems like it's a hazy recollection at this point. So yeah, we have to get it documented and have to get it solidified and out the world, because yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah. You mentioned the guys from Sinaloa. When I posted that picture about our talk, Pete messaged me. He's like, "Hey, where'd you get that picture?" And I was like, "Oh, they gave it to me." And he's just like, "Hey, that was, he apparently he set up that show and
yeah."
So I love Pete and those guys from Sinaloa. They are amazing guys. Like Pete is like one of the nicest guys in hardcore, and
yeah,
like I love Pete. But I was like, oh shit, did I like make
he might
a
have
mistake?
He might have actually taken the picture. I don't know. I just have a collection hard drive of stuff with random things that are on it, and yeah, that might have been from his camera. I don't know, because he did take video, because he was texting me about this as well. He's got some video lying around that we're hoping to get up somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, so I ran into him in December and gave him like the biggest hug. I hadn't seen him probably in like 15 plus years, and it was like a 5-minute hug. Like that, yeah. That guy is so amazing, so genuine in every aspect. Yeah, good stuff.
I know a lot of other people probably have asked you guys, is there any chance of a Hassan I Sabbah reunion? Like you see all these other bands getting together, like Seisha and Jerome's Dream is back together again now, and you just see it all over the place. In Loving Memory is starting up again. Everybody asks, will there ever be a reunion? And if not, if there isn't a reunion for a show per se, what about like recording some of those lost songs that you said?
You're looking for that, huh? You want the good stuff.
I think if Portraits of Past asks us to do a split, we get back together.
Yeah. No, I think anything's possible. So most of Hassan, 80% of Hassan has been on calls together talking about things like this, and we've been kind of all communicating, the 5 of us, through text and everything else, and trying to figure it out. There's a lot of practicalities that comes with that. So I think that there's probably there's definitely a hope and definitely a dream and something that we want to do eventually, because I think it'd be a nice way to kind of, just have closure to some degree, or have a finality to all this stuff. Because when we broke up, it really felt like it was way too fast, and a lot of people that were making decisions for that back in the day really regretted it, and they had this sort of longing and lingering that they kind of have to resolve. So I think that there's definitely some hope there. But the first thing, I guess, that we're trying to see if we can do is just get all the tracks in one place and create a discography from it. So that's something that we're actively doing now. And with the Instagram account and everything else, we're trying to get the stories out there and just sort of make a record, make an idea of this is what the history of a song was. And then from there, who knows? I mean, I had dinner with Mike a week and a half ago or something, and he's now in Japan on tour with Unearth and about to meet up with Madball in the UK. He's going to be on tour until May and whatever else. So minus what we want to do, it's also based off of just real life schedules that we have to kind of factor into. He wouldn't be able to even think about it until summertime, and then who knows what we can do. But we've been it's been fun because we've been getting asked left, right, and center to play shows, different fests that are coming up. Different bands, like you mentioned, are actually asking us to hop on bills with them and stuff too. I don't know. I think everybody, for the most part, is pretty much into it. It's just the reality of how do we make it happen.
Now, with the discography, would the older songs just get remastered and then just compiled into a full length type of thing? And are there record labels out there that are interested? I know Casey was on here from Iodine, which I still have this bad boy that you guys are
man.
on.
Yeah.
So I mean, are you in touch with labels trying to put out the discography? Because I know a handful of labels that would want to jump on that.
Yeah,
So I think we're in the works with stuff, but for obvious reasons we can't say anything yet because nothing is totally definite and we don't want to blow up anybody's spot or anything, but as to what would be on it, it would be all the songs. I think I can say this, the 7-inch got remastered, where everything got remastered by Jack Shirley.
Nice.
Which is total fucking dream, man. To have had a 7-inch recorded by Kurt Ballou and then 20 years later get it fucking remastered by Jack Shirley, we have no business having that stuff attached to our music. You know what I mean? Those guys are both geniuses. So he's done the remastering. So we've gone through that process and got all that stuff. So at this point, we think it'll be a 12-inch discography. And we're working on stuff like the liner notes. And like Ryan said, we're trying to get information and details and stories and kind of get everything straight a little bit. And Chad is putting together some stuff that will discuss the lyrics and the songs. So I think our hope is we had talked about it for years. We thought some of the stuff was lost.
Yeah.
And the reason we had never tried before is we were just it's impossible because all the tapes are shot. Mm-hmm. But then it turns out Ryan found the masters or the tape for the 7-inch. And we kind of got everything together a little bit. Jack Shirley worked some magic, So I think we can kind of put a lot of this stuff together and have it as a document, and we're focusing now on that part of it, making it an actual document of that moment in time, and kind of what that scene was like and where that music came from, and what it was about and why it was so short-lived, I mean, one thing that we should set straight, there's a lot of internet chatter about Chad's vocals on the last song on the 7-inch, where people are like, oh, he's crying. It's no, man, that dude's voice was blown the fuck out.
Yeah.
And I think it's the last song we recorded. Mm-hmm. And he was screaming like crazy, through that whole recording session. Yeah. And when you hear his vocals go from scream to high pitch to kind of clean and he's breathing heavy, he literally cannot breathe.
Yeah.
He's screaming his guts out. And that what I think people took to be him crying is like he can't breathe. That is the only sound he can get out of his mouth to try to finish that song.
I remember when he finished the vocals, he came into the mixing booth and was like, "How was that?" And we were all just like flat faced.
Yeah.
And he went out.
No, it was like watching a fucking exorcism.
I know he went outside and just threw up. He was like physically gone. Like just he was out for like a day or two after that.
Yeah. I remember that too. We recorded the demo and some of those songs at his house with Mike's stuff. Like he had the headphones on and we had already tracked all the music. So we're sitting in like this living room in this house in the middle of the fucking woods, and he starts screaming, and me, Zach, Ryan, and Mike are sitting back like, holy shit, you know, like we knew he would be good, but oh my God. And it was the same thing in the studio, man, where their performance of that was just, I mean, it looked inhuman, you know. I remember his body and his face, like he was just totally shot and wrecked. Yeah. And we were just kind of like, oh, we just knew like this thing's fucking good, dude. Yeah. Did you just see what he did? Like, this is it, you know?
I mean, that being said, if you guys do a reunion show, are you, being old like me, how is that gonna, unfold? Because I know I can't exude that much energy that I used to. Is that something to be, in the back of your mind?
You gotta go.
We actually just talked last night.
Yeah.
I think we have to probably, definitely do a couple warm-ups. Maybe stretch a little bit beforehand.
No,
get some towel.
You gotta go Honeywell style and just throw that shit through a distortion pedal.
I think the one thing that would be interesting though is if with hindsight being 2020, to be able to play now and knowing the song structures and actually the musicality of it, I think we might be a better live band than we were back then. Back then it was performance art, and I think it was awesome, and we always played amazing shows and really ripped it up. But I think for people that have listened to the songs for 20 years, doing something like that might be a disservice. So if we play again, it's really kind of making sure that the music comes through. So I think if anything, a lot would probably be helpful and change. But yeah, we've had a lot of conversations around how this could actually unfold, and that's one of them. It's like, can Chad sing? Can Mike play those insane beats? With me having probably one of the the arguably easier parts, I'm still struggling kind of getting some of the sequencing down because it's small, but there's some little like intricacies and timing and stuff that we jump and do parts that are, it sounds like a blare of music, just a blast of music, but there's definitely some things that we're listening to in terms of like, mathcore or math rock and other things that were kind of coming through in some parts that I can't keep up with right now. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I can't wait. If it actually does come to fruition, I'm amped, and hopefully it happens in New England, like where it all started. You know what I mean? I like those shows you were talking about in Haverhill and Lawrence and places like that. I mean, those shows were so special to me, and in the Red Barn and stuff like that in North Andover, and just like very, very special places, especially New Hampshire kid like me with Safe and Sound up in Rochester and Cafe Savoy in Manchester, New Hampshire. Like it's just very, very special time for me, and I can't tell people enough how special it was. You know what I mean? So
really, it was. Yeah.
Are you getting a timer on your thing? Because I know Instagram says. I think
we've got like probably like 1 or 2 minutes left. So yeah, I think if you're good, Hal, this has been super fun. So I think we can probably call it. Yeah. This is any last question.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to thank you guys so much for doing it. I know a lot of people wanted to hear some stories. Like I said, the band is kind of a myth in legendary status. And I just want to thank you so much. It's an honor to talk to both of you. Definitely, I want to stay in touch. I'm always putting videos out and stuff like that. If you're ever up in New England, I know, hit me up, hang out, get a coffee, whatever. Yeah. But I just want to say I love the band, and I love all your old bands that you guys were into as well. And I have nothing but great things to say about both of you guys.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks so much for caring enough to let us do this. Yeah. It's very cool to sit and try to remember how this stuff went, to see that anybody actually cares about it still. So it's very cool.
Amazing.
Now, is there anything to pitch real quick before they shut us off? Anything you guys got like that?
For now, I think it's just the account. We're going to try and update it as much as we can over the next couple months, and then you're going to hear some news this year for sure.
Awesome.
People got pictures or videos or stories or flyers or anything like that. Like, we need all that stuff, you know, as we put the discography together. So if people have got stuff, man, we would love to see it.
Anything I find, I try to send to you guys too. So,
man,
definitely. Have a great day, and thank you so much for taking time out on a Sunday. You know, family. You know, that's why I'm parking lot pimping right now.
Wild card weekend, man.
Yeah. So, thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it, and let's stay in touch.
Thanks, Al. Thanks.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thanks, y'all.